All right, show off. Are you ready to put on a show? Oh, you got to get back up there. Get back up there. Come on. You know the rules, man. Ready? Uh-huh. Think you're something, don't you? All right, Keeks, last one. You ready? There you go. 3 for 3. Good job, kiddo. All right, guys, I just had a buddy leave, and you know, he doesn't know about paint and bodywork stuff. He just come over to see me, and I was working on the car, so he asked me about this stuff. And he asked me why that this stuff back here was gray, and all the other parts of the car is this, you know, light gray or green color for the plastic body filler. So I thought I would go ahead and do a video because, you know, some of you guys might need to know this. I know a lot of my subscribers are, you know, first time guys dragging a car in and building it. You guys have never done this before, so this is just a little something I do. I've seen people use all kinds of stuff. I've seen them use fiberglass filler like the tiger hair, kitty hair. I've seen guys use panel bond, 2-part seam sealer that dries hard, and then they go back in and sand it. I mean, guys use all kinds of stuff. This is what I have used since the 90s, and I love it. I've always used this, and I've never had trouble with it, and that's why I continue to use it. This is USC brand. There's other brands out there, but all it is an aluminum filler. Body filler is all it is. It comes with this style hardener. Now I'm going to explain the reason why I use this in certain areas of a vehicle. So back here on this 55, originally there was a lead seam here, and there's a lead seam down here, because this is where the quarter panels welded to this part of the car. You can see the flange right here. So what I did was I had cracked filler, and also I had rust back here, and I do have a video of me patching this. I basically cut out my rust. I used some sheet metal that I cut out that fit in there, you know, butt welded in there. But I took that sheet metal after I cut it out and got it to where it fit. I laid it up here, because this tail paint on this 55 is curved right here. And I laid that sheet metal there, and I just squished it with my hand to get that curve in it. And then I just butt welded it in there, tacked it all in, and then ground it and butt welded it. So I'd melted the lead out of the back here. And after that, I use a pretty stiff stainless steel wire wheel on the drill, like a cordless drill, and just go in there and go really slow with that speed going fast, but move slow. So it gets all the rest of the lead out of it, because if you've ever tried to tack weld something and there's traces of lead in it, it stinks, it smokes, it pops, it sticks, it does all kinds of a mess. But I had went in here and I tacked and tacked and tacked until that whole thing had tack welds all over it, and then I went through and I ground it. Same thing here, you know, tacked and then welded. Well, what happens is when you get done welding and then you start grinding it, once you get that weld or the ground down, you know, there might be pinholes there, and sometimes you can see them. Now, in the event that I have some that after I'm done grinding, you'll see holes that didn't get full weld on them, I'll go back and re-zap those spots and then re-grind again. But you can still have a tiny pinhole that you may not necessarily see. Now, if you went through this and just use a regular old plastic body filler back here and just slimed this thing up with filler and then sanded it, you may find out after about a year, because this happened to me back in the 90s, after about a year, I got a few rust bubbles back here. Not rust bubbles, but just bubbles in the paint. And this is what happened. Plastic body filler is not supposed to be subjected to water, moisture, rain, whatever. It absorbs it like a sponge, and what happens is it expands, and that's what causes bubbles in paint. Now, the location of this on the car with this pinch weld, if you're driving down the road, or if you wash your car and you get water up through, you know, between the taillight mounting flange and it gets down in here, that water can get into that pinch weld and work its way back to the back side of that plastic filler and start soaking it up. So I use all metal aluminum filler because it's pretty much water resistant, and all that does is basically covers my butt in case there is a pinhole that I missed that water could get to. Now, you could go back here and undercoat this, or use, you know, bed liner or whatever back on there too, but which I probably will. But I always use all metal in all my seams, all my weld seams when I put something together. And then I go back in and I just kind of rough it in a little bit, and then I'll finish it with plastic filler, you know, finish out the shape with plastic filler. but that all metal will keep that water from coming through. And again, I've seen guys use all kinds of stuff, you know, fiberglass fillers and all. I have never had good luck with fiberglass filler. I had a buddy of mine that fixed his rust in the bed of his truck, and he used fiberglass filler, and it ended up bubbling over time. But I've never had an issue with the all metal doing that, so that's why I said. But so that's why this is gray, is because I use all metal, and it's pretty much just it's body filler. It's just aluminum, you know what I mean? I use it in all my lead seams. If I take lead out, I replace it with all metal instead of lead, because I don't have all the lead stuff here, and that's just what I use. So in case anybody else is wondering, that's what I would recommend to put on all your seams or on any of your welds. All right, guys, I wanted to show the dash. I had sandblasted this, mainly the top, because somebody had sanded it down to bare metal back in the 90s and left it, so it was pretty bad. So I used my portable sandblaster and just went in here and blasted the whole top, and then I went in and welded up a couple holes from a tack mount, and then body filled everything and sanded it. Now the car, it's been setting since I think summer is when I done that, the end of summer, so it's set up pretty much all winter. And it's, you know, it's starting to get rust on it and stuff. It's getting that, you know, dark gray look to it over shiny silver. So I'm going to show using a cut brush here that I've got on my. All right, so this dash has got quite a bit of rusty marks on it because I was building that fold down radio delete cover here. So for me reaching in there and messing with stuff, I also fabricated a new speaker mount for behind the dash there. So you can kind of see some rusty spots from my handprints and arms or whatever. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up. There's a pretty good row of rust right here, a little bit on the bottom of the ignition switch. So here we go. kind of give you an idea there how fast it kind of works. You know, operating that thing for a while, it does get a little heavy. Now at the bedliner shop I used to work at, they had a little air-powered tool with the side handle on it. It's a little bit smaller, so it's a little bit lighter than what this is, but I don't have an air tool like that, and all I have is this. So that works pretty good, especially on a buffer, because you can, you know, change your speed and all that. Most people have, well, I shouldn't say most people, some people have buffers, I guess, but anyway, that is it, cleaned up. Now, every time I do this to a car, like if I sand it or strip the paint off of it, and then over time, you know, the time I get my metalwork done, it starts oxidizing. I always go back with this and clean it up real good, but I always go right back over it again by hand with either red Scotch-Brites or 220 grit sandpaper, whatever I have in my garage. But that thing really works pretty nice to clean that metal right back up. So, and it's still pretty good roughed up, you know, to do a primer on. But that's it. All right, guys, here's that nylon cup brush right here, 5/8 thread here. This is a 6-inch. They do have a 4-inch as well. It's $19.99 with free shipping, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that. But this one actually says Duragold. I haven't tried one of these before. The ones I usually get are like they don't have a name brand on the box at all. But I'm going to try one. I've ordered from these people before. This is TCP Global. Well, I am really not looking forward to this. So from up here, if you look down at the rocker, you don't really notice anything. But when you get down here, there's a kicked up spot right here from about there to there. And then right here's a really bad boy. This thing actually has a crease line right in the edge of that, so that is caved in really bad right there. So I am gonna try, I think I might be able to get this one out with my stud gun, welding some studs under there and pulling and maybe holding tension on it and then whacking on this a little bit. That one there is so tight with a crease up inside the edge of it, that is probably not coming out of there. So what I think I'm gonna do is cut it like right in the middle of the rocker, about halfway under the rocker edge, because it's like that wide under there. I think I'll cut that out, and if I can't get that reshaped, I might try. I've got an old rocker here that has a good section. This is actually a reproduction rocker, but I might try a section of that, like right here, and put it in there. But hopefully I'll be able to straighten that, because I can tell you for sure a factory replacement style rocker does not fit exactly like a factory one. So this is what I've been really dreading, is that the other rocker's just fine, but this one's got a couple of whammies in it. So all right, so I ended up cutting a piece of the rocker out. You can see that. The thing is pretty fried. I had an old rocker here. It was actually an aftermarket that I bought, and I'd used a piece or two off of it, but anyway, I cut a piece of it and I'm going to replace it. I cut it a lot bigger because I've got to go back and straighten this cut up. I'm basically going to section that in, butt weld it all in, and then grind it. It should be good. Alright, so I got everything all trimmed out. So I got it to where it pretty much kind of fits in there. I need to clean the primer off of this so I can get some good welds. Now, normally what most guys do is they use magnets, like little bitty magnets, and they'll put a magnet half on this and half on that to hold it up in there, and you know, it'll pretty much hold it level and all that. And they also sell them, it's like a clamp style that you can run down and it'll goes in between the two panels, you know, and leaves you a little space like you want when you're welding something. But the magnets I have are very, very weak, and what I have found happens every single time when I go in for my first zap, that MIG wire, when it hits it, will actually push it in a little bit and it'll make it uneven. So I always do this by hand. You can do it however you want. Just telling you, I'll be setting all this up by hand, one tack at a time. So I've got this to where it fits really nice and has a space all the way around. You don't want this metal being touching. You don't ever want to touch a patch panel to the both pieces touching. Metal moves when you're welding it. For your first tack, you'll feel it move it. You'll feel it move if you hold on to it. You'll feel it pull when you, as soon as you hit your first zap. So one thing that I always do, and this will always save you if you're doing something like this where you've got sharp corners, you cut it this way and this way, it's just a 90-degree corner. I will go in with my Rolock disc or Norton Blaze disc, and I will just barely take that corner off, not make it sharp. You basically flatten the corners off. That way you don't have a bind issue. It doesn't bind it up in there, because that can happen. So I will hold this exactly where I want it, and I will probably put my first tack right here on this corner edge. Once I have that perfectly straight, I will put a tack there, and then I will move this until it's perfectly straight up here and put a tack up there. And then at that point, I will probably go ahead and do one here and then here. So I'll work my way to this side instead of doing one end to the other. That way this thing is still pretty movable where I want it. But these aftermarket rockers do not have the same radius right here as factory. So I had to go in here and work on this with the hammer a little bit to get it to match the factory rocker. That's what I hate about aftermarket sheet metal. You spend a lot of money on that part. You pay oversized shipping on a part that you have to modify to make it fit right. So I'm pretty happy with that. So, you know, it's a lot of work just replacing this section, but when I'm done, it'll have very minimal putty in it. And the reality is, if it grinds out smooth and there's no, you know, low sides to it or whatever, that rust defender primer that I use, that polyester primer, will probably fill it all. I may not even have to put filler on it at all. But there's no way I'm going to go in there and try to hammer that out and try to rework that. It's just, why do it when I had a rocker here? If I wouldn't have had this here, I would have probably made a new one. But I'm pretty happy with that fit so far. I'm gonna go ahead and break for lunch and come back out and work on it some more. But that should fix my rocker issue. Here's another thing from yesterday. So when I went in here and blasted this area, I had a few pinholes, and I went in there with a cone burr bit and opened up the rust, you know, ground it all out of there, and then I went in and welded everything back up. And then when I ground it smooth, I put all metal on there just in case it gets moisture to the back of it, it'll be protected. But this is factory lead seam right here, and I was going to leave it in there, which I'm still going to leave it in there. That was mega high, like way high. When you run a straight edge little piece down through there, it would rise up and you'd have space in here. So I took my angle grinder and sit there and work that like this, pretty much on that edge with that curve, until I got a lot of it out there. You would not believe how much lead I took out of there. So that is proof right there of how the factory did not get these seams perfect with lead. They were, you know, left them high. But now I have a pretty nice transition. It's pretty smooth all the way to the fender well lip. So it was a massive amount that I took out there. I was kind of amazed. Well, I'm gonna break for lunch, guys. All right, get this stupid thing welded in. I'm gonna go ahead and let that cool down all the way for a little bit. I don't like just keep the heat going. I don't want to warp it all to hell. I've got that panel fit really nice, like butted up perfectly all the way around. So when I grind that, if I don't get any warpage in it, where it would if I kept going, if I grind that, it should be pretty much undetectable that it was ever replaced. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this rocker up a little bit with this cup brush. You can see it's got some light oxidation on it. It's still got little spots of the original, red primer on it. I'm gonna clean this up a little bit. Pretty nice. That thing's still pretty hot. I'm gonna go ahead and let it cool down completely, just to be on the safe side. All right, guys, so I am done for the day. I'm laying here in the sun and I am cooking. Once it gets late in the afternoon, it's a little after 5, the sun gets off to this side and I'm laying in this area right here trying to work that rocker, and I am cooking. So I got the outside all finished out, metal finished out. It turned out really awesome. The bottom side, I've still got to finish grinding and finishing, but I'm done. I am soaked in sweat from laying in the sun, and I almost feel like I might be a little on the sunburn side. So I'm gonna go ahead and put up shop, get this thing back down. I've got it jacked up just so I'd have room to get under it, but the crush spot is gone out of the rocker.